So I guess I'm going to introduce our final keynote for Think Indigenous 2016. I'm going to introduce him as he comes up and delivers a speech here for all of us in regards to this conference and in regards to Indigenous language revitalization and the path and the journey that he's been on for many years. Dr. Neal McLeod, I've known him for quite a number of years, and the work that he's done. He's always been one to want to help anybody that's thinking about incorporating language and writing language as part of their work that they do in education. An author, a poet, a painter. Last year at this conference, he donated a painting of his own work, an original painting that was gifted to one of our elders in our communities. And really appreciate the support that he's given us. And we're really honored here to have Neal come, take the time out of his day. And he's another one that said there was no, there's no honorarium for what I do here. I'll just come and speak from the heart. And these are the kinds of conversations that are so important for us and wanting to share. So please help me and welcome Dr. Neal McLeod to the stage.
So thank you very much for asking me to come today to speak. I know we're running a little late, so I won't go too long. Try and keep it to about 25 minutes. First of all, I want to thank the organizers for putting this all together. It's a lot of work. A lot of the people who set up all the booths, the sound guys, the unsung heroes. Can you guys wave to them? That's kind of half-hearted. You have to look at them when you do it. Can you look at them like you mean it? Like make us believe in you. I think he's shy about his wallet. That has Aspinagan in it. So, I want to the best of my ability, talk about ideas for reviving Cree and a bit about my journey with Cree. I'm from James Smith. That's where I grew up. I was raised by my late father, Jerry McLeod, back in the 70s, 8 tracks and all that stuff. No seat belts. Life was dangerous in the 70s. People would smoke all the time, just light up, spark up. We're tough. If you wanted to download a song, you had to listen all night to the radio and tape it. Now you, Oskaya, you youth today, you just like click and it's done. That's what's killing us as a people. It's like, bring back the Tupperware parties. That's why we are lost today. Tupperware. Remember my late father was very particular about his Tupperware at feasts. He was always trying to steal his Tupperware. You guys, ITEP should make Tupperware with syllabics and stuff. No, can you get someone on that? Just kidding. You got someone who can do that? Text them. Irene Oakes. She'll do it. All right, I better get going here. Be like, time's up. Be like Showtime at the Apollo. He'll come out with a cane. Anyway, I just want to share a bit of some of my ideas for whatever they're worth. So I grew up with my late father, Jerry McLeod, or Jeremiah. They spelt it wrong. There's an E missing. Remember one time this German professor, there's a typographical error on your tattoo. There's a typographical error. Those Germans, you gotta love them. But, so I was raised by him. And I'm also half Swedish. You can tell by the Ragnar beard, yeah, if you watch Vikings. I used to try and grow long hair, but I just looked like a white hippie, so I thought, I go with the Viking cut, really lean on the sides there. And can we just, Dion Tatusas, can you stand up for a second, please? Now, this guy has the most magnificent eyebrows in all of Creedom. Give him a round of applause. They're magnificent. A lot of bear grease every day, mascopamine. He's got products, he sells them, if you're interested. Got to give him tobacco, approach him in a good way, in that right way. Remember my dad used to say, "You're ugly, but in that good way." In that sacred way. And then when I was a kid, I used to think my Indian name was Awas. I even have it tattooed, gangster, and Gothic text too. Cree tattoos are coming back, eh? Coming back. All right. So, I think the next 20 years are critical for the survival of Cree language, our language. Oftentimes on the radio, you'll hear people say there's 3 languages that will be safe. Cree is one of them. But wherever you go today, you'll notice that like we were starting to lose our language. A lot of younger people, even in communities that where everyone spoke it when I was a kid, people under the age of 25, many do not speak Cree today. And I think we should think about, like, why has that happened? Probably one reason is, I think, television, probably. I think another reason is we don't take time to visit as much. And I think English can be very distracting at times. And I think another thing, too, for a lot of people is, like, English was the first language that I spoke. I heard Cree ever since I was born, but I think sometimes we worry about making mistakes, like we don't want to be disrespectful and misunderstand someone. Or we might say something funny sometimes that we don't mean to. I'll give you a quick example of that. One time, is this a PG crowd, or what is it? Well, I'm no stranger to controversy, so. But I was teaching at Whitefish, and I was teaching painting back in the day, back in the 90s, the height of Nirvana. Plaid was big. Now hipsters wear plaid, but then it was cool. Has anyone here been mistakenly taken as a hipster? Been insulted? No. You notice all the hipsters, everything they have is like really how Cree people dress, like plaid and Muslim hats. But anyway, so I was trying to say it will look like something. This woman had her painting on the ground. So I wanted to say, we Nagwan. But you know what I said? We Nagwan. It means it looks dirty. So in astonishment, she shook her head and left. And then some other guy from Whitefish kind of gently, they're very gentle when they correct you, said, you know what you said, right? Another time I was trying to say, when are they coming by car when I was teaching at Red Earth? And I wanted to say, dan speak a wee tagopayit, like when are they arriving by car? But I said, dan speak a wee tagopayit, when are they turning into a wheat to go? And they're like, there's none of that here. There's none of that here. No wheat to goes. All the Moniao zombie stories are kind of lame compared to ours, eh? All right. So, I think that just very briefly, just to reflect on this conference and the University of Saskatchewan. When my dad started in 1966, which is 50 years ago, it's hard to believe. They had reel-to-reels, CCR, you know, back then, reel-to-reel recorders. But how many people do you think, how many First Nations people do you think were at the University of Saskatchewan in 66? Someone shouted out, you win a blanket. Start giving away all this stuff. Neal, that's for the giveaway later. You can't just give stuff away, okay? Okay? Shut him down! Kill the mic. You won't kill the mic, right? Okay. But how many people do you think were at the University of Saskatchewan then? 3. Exactly. There was 3. That's it. So she wins a blanket. So, and then of course ITEP, 2 of my aunts were graduates of ITEP. And, you know, think of all the steps that have occurred. You also have a strong Cree language component there. Kevin was working, had a good talk in Cree. Very exceptionally fluent Cree speaker. I think if you want to pick up Cree more, the best thing is to sit with people who speak Cree very well. And actually, I have this simple idea that I think could work. Is if everyone, it would be a mentor system, and it wouldn't cost any money. That's the thing. To save our languages, I don't think we can only rely on government grants or anything like that. It's basically a lot of individual effort. Here's an idea. It's a mentoring system where everyone would make the time every day to communicate with someone who speaks more fluently than them. Even just a text or a Facebook. How many of you put Facebook messages in Cree? Okay, good. Nehiawake so squats totamok. Like, speak Cree, just do it. Don't write essays about why our language is important. Just use it. You know how people, I'm writing my essay on the importance of language. Well, how do you say hello? I don't know. But I will expound on the importance of the languages, even though I don't know how to say hello. So I get a little carried away. I grew up after the Buffalo and before gangs, so it was a weird time. A lot of dead air on the reserve back then. So, sadly, I was a chess champion at the local redneck school. Wore rubber boots to school. My one uncle from Sandy Lake gave me Brill cream. Can you imagine? That made you tough. You had to fight. You had to fight. But I want to tell you a funny story quickly about Brill cream. Dion, you're supposed to bring my buffalo hide PowerPoint. But Dion forgot because he was grooming his magnificent eyebrows. In all of Creedom, there are no eyebrows more magnificent than those of Dion Tatusis. I think we have a bromance. Kind of like Skipper and Gilligan, but not. Stops there. Anyway, so one time, my tsapan from Sandy Lake, his name was Gogo Cheese, a.k.a. Peter Vandale. You ever notice how when we pingayak our names, it sounds funny? Like Neal McLeod. Like, how do we get these weird names? Like, they don't really mean anything. But anyway, he wanted to go to Prince Albert, Kestepananik, as the cowboys say. So he went, or no, as the Crees say. The cowboys say Prince Albert. Got mixed up. That's what happens when you got half a tank of Swede swirling around in your head. I'm living proof my dad liked ABBA. The love of ABBA. It's right here. Anyway, so just an example of some of the funny things that happen with language and misunderstanding. One time my grandfather wanted to go to Prince Albert and he couldn't read English, but he kept all his journals in syllabics. And I'm a strong advocate of syllabics. I prefer writing in syllabics over the English orthography. But, so he grabbed what he thought was Brill cream. And then whenever they would go to town, they'd always wear suits, right? They'd always wear suits because they didn't want the newcomers to think they were better than them. And it's not that they were proud, but they wanted to like kind of hold their own. Oh, someone's whistling. But anyway, so he thought he was putting, he thought he was putting Brill cream in his hair. So he went to town with my uncle Burton, or Paitan, that's how they used to say his name, Paitan. They used to call me Neen. There's no Neal, say Neen. Or they go, wah-wah pneumoniasums. My little white grandson. This tapan of mine thought it was hilarious that I was so white. Wow, that guy's white. They turn off the lights and just look at my white skin sometimes. It took a lot of therapy. I'm still healing. And the first stage in reconciliation is healing inside. That's what I'm doing. But anyway, so they went to town, Prince Albert, to get some parts. Because all my Vandal relatives, they were very good mechanics. Like when my dad and my uncle used to work in the shop, they name all their parts in Cree. Like they wouldn't speak English at all. They name everything in Cree, everything. So anyone who says that Cree is a language that can't describe the modern world is lying, because Cree can. We have old metaphors that can be extended into the present. An example is welding. My uncle used to say, agogasige, like to cook it together, right? To cook it together. Like there's all these really cool metaphors, even like turning out lights, astuepta, like you're turning out, almost like the campfire, right? So our language is metaphorical, it's highly poetic, but before I get sidetracked on that. So they were in the store, and all the Monial guys are looking at them, like, you know. And at first, you know how Indian guys always think they're being racist? These guys are racist. So he goes, how come they're looking at us like this? And he goes, my uncle goes, well, what did you put in your hair? Well, I used a apatita and brill cream. I can't remember how to say brill cream. So he goes, no, Dad, that's toothpaste in your hair. Toothpaste. He should have stuck to syllabics. Hooked on syllabics. They should have a show, Hooked on Syllabics. Okay, so one thing is I want to give a few ideas of learning tips in Cree, because I think if we're going to revive our language, we need like really creative and decisive action. We cannot take it for granted that our language is going to continue. Of course, in our ceremonies, it'll always be there, but we need to embody that. We need to use it every day, because I'm very conscious of this, because when my father died, like I'm the oldest one, and I'm only 45 in my line, right? Like I don't have any parents or anything, so I'm the oldest. So when we lose people, like lost a lot of people that were close to me in the last couple of years. My Uncle Burton, Vandal. You know, this is another thing. Don't think just because someone has a PhD that means they're smart. I'm not. Well, no, really, because so all of a sudden they cut the mics. This isn't what Think Indigenous is about. We're at university. We're trying to encourage people to go to school. Cut the mics. Shut them down. Is CSIS here today? No? Okay. But one time I was, my uncle had a funny word for sauna. You know, you know what a sauna is? They used to call it Monial Matutsan. Like a white man's sweat. So we're sitting in the Monial Matutsan, Monial Matutsaning up. And he goes to me, he says, well, it's good you went to school for so long, but until you can speak Cree like even somewhat like us, you really won't know very much. So I got mad, I put him in a headlock, I said, look, no, I'm just kidding. I think that's called elder abuse. And we should laugh about that. But you know how sometimes people say something and it kind of stings for a bit? And you just quietly take it in? I couldn't think of more truer words that have ever been spoken to me. Yes, it's good that I went to school for so long, but the challenge when you go to university is not to become assimilated by the process. Because too often our stories are not valued in universities. Too often our languages are not valued. When I wrote my master's thesis, I was told that Cree was not an academic language, for instance. So I think when we go to university, we have to take all the best that we can learn. Obviously, there's many skills. Universities can be indigenized by having, I think all universities should have storytellers in them. All our languages should be taught, and they are. But I think that should really be the focus, because I think it's our language and our stories that are the center of it. And when my uncle said that to me, it really inspired me to really work hard at it. Now, I've got a lot of pages here, so I'm going to have to cut things. I'm starting to cut things short. I told too many jokes at the start, so I'm sorry. I think that's how we lost the country. We're telling jokes. All the British are marching. And we're like, just a sec, just go. I got one. So this Cree guy walks into a fur trading post with the parrot on his shoulder. He says to the Blackfoot, he says, I don't know where that came from. From the heavens. But here's some concrete tips, and I'm going to try and move this along because I know we're over time. Some of you, you're getting texts from your loved ones. Where are you? I'm waiting outside. You said it was done at 3:30. Are you talking to Chris Scribe? Because I'm going to come in there and get solid, okay? I'm going to mash them up. So if you need to text your loved ones, just tell them everything's miwas in here, okay? All right, so here's some ideas. That mentoring system was one, where you pair up with two people more fluent peers about the same level, and then maybe help people. That's the key, is we have to help people. Yes, we can make funny mistakes and we can laugh, but you should never use our language to humiliate people, because that's going to turn people off. It's going to turn people off when you humiliate and demean people. I think that's a product of residential schools myself. We have to put that aside. I once asked my dad, how would you, dan sabi ma'am sko tamano magagispa in residential schools? And he said, ekskagwayak, like we wear it. Like that's so profound, like we wear it. We need to put all that aside. We need to put that aside, and we need to support each other to speak Cree. We need to encourage people. Maybe some of us munya we pingayak. I do. I have an English twang when I talk Cree, but that's okay. Some of the old people had Soto twangs when they talk Cree. Some of the old people had Nakota twangs when they talk Cree, right? A little bit of an accent's all right. A little bit of spice in the bannoc's not bad. So, but we need to work together. That's the only way we're going to save our language. And we have to work decisively. We have to start right now. Getting all dramatic. The future of the world. So all of a sudden the heavens open up. But here's another one. Phone up a friend or relative today and say, you know, I'd like to phone you once a week and ask you some Cree words. And then just, or visit, the better yet is to visit with them. What I used to do back in the early 90s, that's a long time ago. Back in the early 90s, when tapes were the thing, I used to tape people. So for instance, I used to tape my Uncle Burton. He didn't have a residential school issues so much because he never went. So he wasn't shy to talk Cree with me. So he'd talk Cree to me all the time. So I tape him for hours. That's the best way, best tip is to sit with people and make your own little recordings. And another old guy, Snake, remember? Edward, AKA Edward Case, but Snake. He used to have this thing on his license, or what do you call it, a bumper? It said, your place and mine. That's what he used to call himself the lone wolf. But one thing we did for fun, and this is another thing to do, is take some English text and then translate it into Cree. So one thing that I did, I know this is probably not written in any curriculum guide or something, but we actually translated Pulp Fiction into Cree. So you know when she says, when they say funky dancer, like how I said, danse kaituan funky dancer. So he said, like matawa said, like someone's powerful, right? Matawisimwit, like she dances powerfully. And I love how he said this, and this is why Cree is the coolest language on the earth. We need more swagger in Cree. When I was a kid, people would bow their heads down when they go to town because of racism, but now we got to speak Cree in public and let people know that it's here. We're not going anywhere. We need more swag in Cree. That's what we need. But what was I saying right before that? Someone. Oh yeah, Pulp Fiction. And then he goes, yeah, the way she dances, she knows something by how she dances that you'll never know. And I was like, boom, wow. Cree is a beautiful language for poetry. I would encourage anyone who is interested in Cree to start writing poetry. Now, that doesn't mean you have to sit at Starbucks all the time and get free Wi-Fi and drink Lappuccinos or Crappuccinos or whatever. What happened to when you could just have a good cup of Joe? Just said, I'd like Joe. Give me a cup. But now it takes you 10 minutes to order, you know. But our old people were poets. The way they pitched the language was like poetry, the rhythm of their words, the way they would put different stems together. All our old people were poets. And if we try to write poetry in our thoughts every day in Cree, I think that's a good start. So another tip is write a little journal every day in Cree and try and insert as many Cree words in it as you can. That's a good first step. Another thing that I think was one of the most powerful things, I'm trying to wrap this up here, is about 6 more minutes. Is that okay? Okay. That was a reluctant 6 minutes. So I'm going to go 7 just to push him a bit. Just kidding. But I think that, you know, one time at a round dance in Saskatchewan, there was a guy from Whitefish, Mel Joseph, and his father's name was Kanagwatsam. That means like a rainbow, like the thing that snares, right? Like the rainbow. Like a lot of those old names are really beautiful, like they're like poems. Anyway, he said something very powerful. He said, if every day you learn 10 words in Cree, in a year you'd know more than 3,000. If you did that for 10 years, you'd know 30,000 words. Now, of course, you need practice to stitch them together, but I put that challenge out to all of you. Have a notebook. Write down Cree words every day. If you did that every day for 4 years, you would know a lot of Cree words. Now, one thing is technology. I had a story of the mirror when Crees first get the mirror, which is quite funny. We'll have to save that for another time because it's way too long. I even rewrote it this morning. How many of you are nerds? Is there nerd pride here? A lot of nerds? Nerd pride, all right. Nerdui pizzigayak. Nerds saying. I was talking to Kevin, my friend here, Nitsiwagan, and I remember some of those guys from the north when I worked in Regina. They had like almost Cree jive. They go, Egi realizu yanoma. I love how those guys talk up there. But one thing is, I'm going to make a couple more points and I'll stop. Watch when I'm about to die, they'll just pull the plug on me. Tell them to stop talking. But technology can be a powerful tool. I mean, I hope no one's like on Facebook now, like scrolling. I hope I'm not that boring. If I am, don't pay me. Done. Okay, it's done. All of a sudden he pulls out, okay, hotshot. But we actually wrote a book on Facebook, and it's called 100 Days of Cree. It's coming out in about 2 months. All the money from the book, there'll be a scholarship at the University of Saskatchewan, because that's where my Nokum, Ida McLeod, she was the first Cree teacher at the university back in the 70s. In her name and also the late Frida Henneku's name, we're setting up whatever funds are generated will go to a Cree scholarship. We'll have to work out the details. So that's what we want to do. Because I always like when you work on a project and then if funds are generated, it can go back to contribute to the strengthening of the language. So what we did is we had 100 days of Cree. So I just want to share a couple things from it. So every day we had themes. So we tried to think of, like how many of you have friends on Facebook that you don't really know? Everyone's like, I know all of them, okay? I know 4,000 people, okay? Every one of them. Anyway, so we thought of like a Facebook friend that you have no connection to. Kunta totem. A friend of no purpose. That's one of the greatest words in Cree, right? Kunta. Why did you kiss me? Kunta. Why do you love me? Kunta. You know you're in love with the Cree when you say, I love you. I love you so much. And they say, cha. That doesn't happen when you're dating a Wonder Bread eater, I'll tell you. They're like, oh my God, really? Do you really love me? So beautiful. This man loves me. Okay, 2 more things, and then it's an Xemaga thing going. So, a few days ago, I was in Toronto, the heart of Neal capitalism, on Bay Street. And I was listening to an old recording that my Muslim made in the 70s of these old people, they were talking about treaties. So I listened to it on my iPod, and I had my big reel-to-reel on my shoulder. Really gangster. Just kidding. But when I was walking along and I saw these like business people, I was thinking, isn't this interesting? The very fact that I am standing and walking on this ground, the heart of Neal capitalism, is living proof that Cree was never completely overwhelmed by English sound, right? So the point of that is, I think that every time we use Cree, every time we speak Cree, we're honoring our ancestors. Every time we use it, to the best of our ability, all the things that they went through were worth it. Because think of all the things our ancestors lived through. They survived smallpox. They survived a Gimaya Gumgak, like 1885, as my family described it. They survived residential schools. They've survived racism, economic, deprivations of so on. But they were strong. So I think that's one of the things with language revitalization is we're really honoring everything that our ancestors stood for. We're honoring their dreams. And I have about 5 more sentences left. I think every Indigenous person is a living embodiment of the power of the human spirit. With our language and songs, because songs are part of our oral history. I'm not a singer, but I really respect our singers that know those old songs, because there's so much oral history in those songs. With our language and songs, we can stitch back the sound blanket of our ancestors. We can carry this old sound through the darkness, which has often been ours since the time of the Troubles, Egi Maya Gumgak, into the light of the future. With this ancestral sound around us, and with this ancestral sound clothing, we can grow back the ancestral stars in our bodies. It is our legacy and our power. Thank you.